Hey, everybody. Hello, and welcome to our second episode of Awaken Your Work Life. I am super excited. I wrote a book. I'm Julie Murphy. Wrote a book called Awaken Your Wealth because money is the result of everything else showing up in your life. And I'm the money chick. But what I've realized is that if you don't work with something that you're passionate about and feeding your soul at whatever life stage or life season of life maybe that you are in, the money doesn't come. Like, you won't get the bonuses, you won't get the pay raises, you're going to work with people you hate when you are not getting your heart and your soul fed in the work that you do in the world. And people are always like doing it for the paycheck. So this is where my friend Karen comes into play. Karen and I met, 15 years ago or so. Maybe not that long ago, because my son's only 11, almost 12. And I had him in my belly when we were doing our first sessions together.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Hard to believe. Yeah. Cameron, your daughter was what? 10?
Like 13.
13? Yeah. Crazy, crazy. So Karen, tell everybody about yourself.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to our conversation. I consider myself an intuitive business strategist, but I'm also the founder of 𝘬𝙬𝙁, which is a 6-piece sustainable capsule collection. And honestly, this timing couldn't have been better because it was birthed at the start of our US lockdown. So, I've got some stuff to share, but I'm just thrilled to be here and to be having these conversations with Julie and with all of you.
Yeah, what I have just realized is that so often it's like we keep hitting these places of suffering, and I'll give an example. Like this morning, I'm sitting here going, okay, I produce this newsletter to get information out into the world, but getting up to the place of production of this newsletter is like, it's like pulling teeth. And I'm like, all right, I'm done suffering, which means I'm not supposed to do the newsletter stuff anymore. But how am I supposed to put in a package to still get everybody the information, but not do it in this format that actually is an older format of how to get people information out in the world? Yeah. And so we have to realize that when we keep running up against roadblocks, Karen and I are smart. We've got our MBAs. That doesn't serve us very well when we're trying to butt up against our suffering cycles, right? Like, it's all the stuff we were not taught in our formal education.
Yeah.
And that's where the magic is. And that's where the expansion is. And it's beautiful, but we just have to start to pay attention to it. Actually, right. I should say pay attention to it, because it's paying attention to it here in our heart space, because our heads will tell us a whole other different story. Right?
It tells us,
in your head.
Yeah, it's like, we make stuff up.
Oh.
We try to fill in the blank.
Stories. And, beyond stories, we are great storytellers.
Yeah. And our imagination works either way.
Yeah,
like it can help us envision what's possible both ways.
Totally.
And we have a tendency as a species to go to the negative. Like, look at all the horrible things that are likely to happen. And that's a leftover, right? That's a hang on, that like reptilian fight or flight part of the brain that like it's an outdated survival reaction. And we're growing out of that now. So yeah, we can make up all kinds of stuff, and usually we go to the negative.
Right. Well, that's that whole concept of misery loves company. Right? It's like, you find some, just look at politics these days, right? Like, one person says something negative and everyone's like, we're all crabs in a bucket and we jump on the bandwagons. And I'm like going, I'm going to observe that behavior over there. And I'm going to allow it to be what it is, because we don't have to suffer. And everyone, it's okay for like your truth to be different than other people's truth. Yeah. Like, when was it not okay for that to be the case? Even if it means, like, from a work life perspective, we have so much judgment around starting a new career at whatever age you are.
Yeah. Like, we have judgment around age, period.
Yeah. Period. I've helped so many people reinvent themselves in their 50s and their 60s, and it's so fun because they re-energize and feel like they have a new lease on life. Something that 20-year-olds do no problem. Like then
Yeah.
you hop from one thing to the next, the next, the next. And it's like, but you can really do that at whatever season or age in life that you are. You just have to find muster up the courage to do it.
Yeah. And the thing about reinvention, right? And stepping into the wisdom of whatever age cycle you're moving into, right? Everything behind you is meant to serve you. It's meant to sharpen your sword for whatever it is you're coming to do next. And people think they can get their lives wrong. You really can't.
Right.
Like all of it is meant to serve you, all of it. I mean, I think I might have even shared here last week, my whole concept is whatever happens, seemingly happens to me, it's not about to me, it's for me.
Oh, so true.
Everything that had the yucky stuff, what we would call yucky, and the like beautiful stuff. And in every instance, it's like, what am I learning from this?
Well, and that's where I think, we've all heard about gratitude journals and all that other stuff, but that's where, I'm not a journal girl, I have to admit, but I am a person that I will, send the gratitude for all those challenging parts that are parts of my past, where I'm just like, I am so grateful for, a specific experience that I had, and I think about, I was born one of 12 children. I have 8 brothers, and now I'm in a field with all men. It was like I was even born into a family that prepped me to be part of a man's industry.
Yeah, there's no,
Like, how do you plan that stuff?
you don't, but not on this plane.
Not on this plane and planet. Divinely orchestrated.
It's all meant to serve you. Like all
Yeah.
life experiences, if you can stand in your truth and take a look at what your natural callings are. And that when we start talking about work, like we spend more time working than we do anything else.
So why would it not be what you're passionate about?
Exactly. And why do we, to your point, suffer through things that no longer serve us?
Right.
Why? And I think it's because we've been trained to be grateful, to hang on to whatever it is that we already have, but that doesn't mean that you can't simultaneously be considering and looking at what your options are.
Right.
Like thinking about doing the research, doing the homework, investigating, courses that you might take part-time, or new jobs, or business ideas and concepts. Like we stopped exploring.
We have
College.
exploring and stop dreaming.
Yeah.
We have stopped dreaming. Like, it's time to dream the new dream. And if we do this in our micro world, then it affects the macro world. I know a lot of people are trying to affect everything that's outside of themselves, and really the outside will shift if the inside shifts first.
Yeah, and it's a strange way to think about it, right? For any of these Trekkie nerds that might be tuned in, it's a little talk about holograms, right? And reflecting what is inside on the outside.
Right.
And so it all shifts. It can shift with a change in attitude.
Right. It's amazing. And even with I watched my daughter this morning, I've been really trying to find this space of not being reactive, because when they transition from mom's house to dad's house, those are always tricky. And I literally just said last week, I said to her, I was ready to go down that whole path of like, Mary Kate, be that parent, and then I was just like, and you know what? If you don't shift, I'm going to just tickle you for 2 hours. And she literally, I watched her do that this morning with her sister. And see, it's catchy. Like when we shift things to a more positive energy, it's like, Rach, come on. If you don't, I'm going to tickle you. And but it just shifts the energy around. I know that's a simple example. And how do you apply that to your work life? It's like the same thing. Like, why do we keep suffering and struggling? And I think about even in my work life right now, people are like, well, are you doing in person? Are you not doing in person? I'm like, we're going to have to do it on Zoom because my kids keep going in and out of school right now.
Yeah.
I mean, my kids just got announced late yesterday, that today is the day off of school and tomorrow starts 2 weeks remote learning because there are 8 new COVID cases in their school.
Wow. Yeah.
And so now they're all home. And I said, right, kids. I'm like, how do we make fun of this? I think we're actually go to my brother's house in Texas and go to the warm weather, and we're going to spend the time.
The truth
so,
there.
so we're adding the giggle, like, but
Yeah.
I can work from, I can, so you adjust and you create. We have to understand we are the creators of our lives,
Yeah.
including our work lives. People say, oh, Julie, well, you own your own business. You don't understand. I do understand because I've helped hundreds and hundreds of people shift where their jobs are to something that's their passion and their purpose. Like, it doesn't mean that you have to become an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
you know?
No,
It
and
doesn't mean that.
yeah, the reality is that we see what we're looking for, and there's biology that supports that, right? That reticular activating system, bundle of neurons in the back of the head that help sort out what you need to know versus all the data that's coming in. And we see what we're looking for. What that means is what we've made a priority, we will notice more of. We'll collect the data to support that. So if you think you're having a really sucky time, you're going to collect data that says you're having a really sucky time.
Right.
So that's not just woo-woo stuff. That is your biology, your physiology actually supporting that. And so this whole idea of shifting, and it's simple, but not always easy, right? Like there are people who want to believe, oh, it'll never work. Well, that is the biggest hurdle, right? You gotta let go of that.
Right.
Stand in what I call the neutral zone. Stand in the neutral zone and don't deny it and say that it's impossible, but maybe you don't completely believe it either. Just stand in that middle zone and be like, I wonder, I don't know how this is going to play out. Let me just stand here and like, I don't know. Let's wonder.
Which is the opposite of what all of our formal training has taught us.
Yeah.
Because we're supposed to make the to-do list, check the boxes. You're successful if you can organize it, structure it, and check the boxes.
Yeah. And I think that what this window is telling us or teaching us is to be prepared for what I'm calling perpetual adaptation.
Oh, like, that is marvelous. Whoa.
Is perpetual adaptation. And I think if you can accept that, if you can be with that for a minute, then the next change doesn't come as such an out of the blue like uppercut.
Well, and it can happen when you say perpetual adaptation. What comes to me is quantum leaps. That allows the space for your life to go from this direction to this direction overnight.
And for people that don't like change, this is a learning that has to happen. We have to, because the more comfortable you are with knowing like, oh, this popped up, all right, we're going to need to shift and do something else, it's less stressful. And look, resistance is exhausting.
Well, and you can tell if you're in resistance when you're seeing yourself resist something, know that that's what actually needs to shift.
Right. And that shift doesn't mean fix it even immediately. It means be willing to look at it.
Feelings. It's about being in the feelings
and being
feel the feelings. I was in a situation yesterday where I watched myself closed my heart, completely shut it down. And then I was just like, I became the taskmaster, which I know how to do extremely well. And then the person I was with was just like, yeah, I'm not really sure what you got, but you're not the same person that you just were. And then all of a sudden I realized I wasn't feeling my feelings, that I was actually sad in the moment. And I just needed to feel those feelings. And then all of a sudden everything went back. My heart space opened back up again. And then I could move into this new space with everything that we were working on in the moment.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting that so often when that resistance is coming up, and I learned a lot of this when I wrote my first book, The Emotion Behind Money, that we don't feel our emotions as much as we need to because they're storing in our systems, or we're acting it out with all the distractions that we choose in life, whether you're eating too much, working too much, I don't know, whatever, smoking, drinking, like they can be good addictions and bad addictions. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter. Like, what is it that you're distracting yourself in your life? It all has to do with the fact that we're not feeling what's actually happening to us in the moment. Like if you have a really crappy boss or people that don't treat you right at work, like that doesn't feel good. But we
Yeah.
have to understand that we then choose to put up with that.
Yep. We,
And we have to feel the feelings behind that so we can move forward.
feel the feelings, acknowledge it. I say stand in your truth, be willing to stand in your truth. Here's the thing, to make a truth statement, again, like what you're saying about your feelings, what you like, what you don't like about any aspect of your life is empowering.
Right.
Because once you look at it, then you can make a conscious decision to do something or not do something. Like
Right.
ignoring it is still an action, it's still a choice, right?
Totally.
Or just sticking with it. So go ahead and make a truth statement about
Mhm.
anything.
Right.
My truth. No one has to see it. You can burn it after you've written it down. But look at it, because it's only from that place that you can make empowered decisions and actions.
Right.
So long as that stuff is floating around up here and you haven't really looked at it, you're not really trying to decide or even investigate it, you're going to make haywire decisions or no decisions at all, which is also a decision. And then you're gonna feel like, wow, look at all this crappy stuff that's happening to me. Well, yeah, okay. You got to look at it.
Well, and the perpetual adaptation is so
Adaptation.
important because we have a lot more change coming in our macro world.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure exactly how that's going to show up over the next couple of months,
Yeah.
but it's coming.
Yep.
I can feel it coming because I'm watching people's pots boil,
Mm-hmm.
and things are percolating. And I'm just staying in that state of observance going, okay, I'm not going to participate in this boiling process that's happening.
Yeah.
And I think it's beautiful on one level because that's where change is going to come from. Like that's where evolution and change is going to come from.
Yeah.
But it's going to come in a package that none of us expect.
Correct.
Just like the riots and the protests and on top of a pandemic and economic stuff, could you have planned that stuff? No. You don't know how things are going to unpack. And this is where I think it's so critical for all of us to really start to align with what really is feeding our heart and soul, particularly in the work that you're doing in the world. I had someone, when this whole pandemic started, they for years knew that they wanted to shift their job out of the medical system. And then this just amplified that. Like they didn't want to plug into the world in their career the way that we're doing it. And I was like, you need to just quit. And she's like, well, what? And I go, your spouse still works, right? And I said, you guys can make it work while you stay in that place that you were talking about, like stay in that place of just observing.
Yeah.
And just wait and watch. And I told her, make her dream list of the job she really desired. Because she's not going to be an entrepreneur. And she actually then took the time. She actually realized she still wanted to stay in the medical field.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that she didn't want to be actually in the hospital setting. She wanted to be more in a doctor's office space instead. But and she carved the space out so she had time to feel her way through that process. Sometimes it's hard, when you don't have the time and carve that out, and she was able to do that even with 2 young kids, and she literally, someone she used to work with, who she loved working with, called her up and said, hey, we have an opening and I saw on Facebook that you're, and I'm like, see, this is how, when you stay in the state of the observer, that what's meant for you comes to you.
Well, there's only so much energetic space, if you will, that we have available kind of to us on a daily basis. And if our thoughts and our consciousness is directed at what is, let's say that 90% of our consciousness is focused on what is, then that leaves 10% for what is possible. Right. And so even if things are coming at you that are more in line with your heart's desire, you're missing it. because you're not being that observer. But I do want to back up just a second to the point you made about something else coming. I think this pandemic was an opportunity for us as a globe to figure out how to collaborate, to work together, to share information, to be individuals, but working collaboratively as one, as a whole. And what happens when you don't learn your lesson the first time is that it comes back to you in a stronger form.
I always say it's like the 2x4 coming and cracking you over the head, and it's going to get harder and harder and harder when you don't shift.
And I think that these conversations, I think helping people to understand how to move beyond their limitations, what they're experiencing, and the fears that this is inducing. I still think that helping people to understand what fear really is and how to move beyond it has never been more important. And so conversations like this are critical. And the first thing is to believe that there is an option, that there is a possibility. Are you willing to believe that there's another possibility for yourself from whatever it is that you're in? You have to go there first. You have to go there first. If you don't go there, then it's not going to happen.
No, it's going to be
because you're
something else.
Right? Yeah, you shut it down.
That's where the stories come from.
Mm-hmm. And so, I agree with you. I think something bigger is coming. Mm-hmm. I think something more challenging is coming. I think conversations like this are critical and important. And I encourage people to take the time. You don't have to make some big giant leap at first, right? Like it's just stop and ask yourself what's true for me. And what do I really, yeah. Yep. What's true for me? Just start there.
Right.
Yeah. And as it relates to work, people, where the work environment is so uncertain right now. But there are new industries emerging. And I do think that everybody has a place. Everybody has a place. They have a skill set. I call it your soul code. Like you came to the planet programmed to do what only you can do. Mm-hmm. Now is really the opportunity to be stepping into that, right? For people to honor their truth. Mm-hmm. If you honor your truth, you're going to find a better way.
Well, and I've heard a lot of people talking about how terrible it is that businesses are closing and people are losing their jobs. And I would encourage everyone who's watching this to try to find what the silver lining in that is. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying that the timing is perfect.
Yeah, never is.
But it never is, right? I think about it like having my first child. Are you ever really ready for your first baby? Never. You think you are, but you have no idea what you're about to embark on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you don't. No. And so I feel like it's so important that you mentioned it earlier. It's about what we focus on is what we create.
Yeah.
And so if you are in a place where you're not sure what that right next step is, or you were one of the ones that what's going on economically caused you to be unemployed or shifting it, it's just important for you to really take the time. Like I just helped a client do some of this transition thought process because she's been out for about 9 months now. Mm-hmm. And she's not at retirement age, but she's treated like she's retirement age by the jobs that she's
by the environment she's in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, right. Because she's 57. Uh-huh. And what's super interesting is that she said to me, she goes, God, I feel like this was a therapy session. And I was like, well, it's about like, yes, all of that happened. But what a great gift to go, if you want to shift something in your life, even if it means she knows she's not permanently going to stay here in Chicago. Mm-hmm. She knows she wants to go live by her sisters out on the West Coast. And it's like, is there a reason why you wouldn't just start applying for jobs on the West Coast? I'm not saying move there, but if the door opens, walk through it. Like you just don't know, but it's like putting your energy out there because she already has a knowing that she eventually wants to get there. And you just don't know. And this is where I encourage everyone to really start to think outside of the box, because miracles can happen. And right now, the more challenging it's getting on the outside, I encourage you to go more inside for your answers.
So when you say that, Julie, and this is for anybody who might be listening and not understand what that means, what do you mean go inside when you say that? This is to help people who may be listening and not familiar with that.
Yeah, so anyone who's been watching me knows that I've gone through a major transition in my life over the last 3 years. Never thought, 4 kids, divorced, and when this pandemic stuff all came down, I have a business that's running and operating, but I've also known that I was supposed to, help the world at large.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew I'm a video person. I've been on TV, I've done all these things. And so for me, like when I went inside going, okay, I know all these people. I always say that we work things out and we act them out through our health and our wealth. And so I have learned through the years that if you have great wealth and you're a good cash flow manager and your budgets are always in a line, then you are usually acting out your emotions and things you're not processing through your health. And so then when the pandemic stuff all came up, all of a sudden when I was going inside, I was like going, gosh, I know all these people in the health arena because of all the research I've done all these years. Let's start having all these conversations about how it acts out in our health. And so that's when this whole Awakening series started. But it was because I took the time to go inside and go, gosh, I've had this knowing for years that I was supposed to help people in these other arenas that had nothing to do with money, but the money is often the result of those things.
Well, and your wheel, it reflects that. When you help people, you look at all aspects of their lives. And what I hear you saying is to be willing to reflect.
Yes.
To be willing to just,
but not reflect up here.
No,
really pulling it from your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it means that you have to sit there and close your eyes and just say, what does my heart want? And you know what? Initially, you're not going to get any answers because you blocked your heart for so long that you don't even know what it's saying to you because you're so used to listening to this up here.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that by not following your aspirations or not trying to stuff down your heart's desires or what excites you, that resistance is exhausting and it takes its toll on you physically. I think that's one of the major reasons why we age so quickly.
There's no doubt.
We spend so much time resisting and ignoring and not paying attention intentionally, like knowing there's something that needs to be different and being like, bah humbug, so. Well,
and I also knew, like, going inside that we all have our natural gifts that we're supposed to share with the world. Your soul code and what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I have this inner control freak, clearly, that childbirth gladly helped me through. Karen was firsthand through a lot of that process. Don't laugh too hard, my friend. But that is the other beauty of this pandemic, is that if you've got any ounce of a control freak in you, you are being forced to let that go, or it will affect your health at this juncture.
Yeah. And
it's just about like saying, okay, allow it to expand, allow yourself to be supported and receive, as opposed to you always having to do it all the time.
Yeah. And I get it. There are people who don't know anything other than taking care of themselves, doing it for themselves, and doing it for other people. So even as a concept, I mean, it kind of stands in the face of how we're socialized. If you are a religious person, you're going to feel like, well, we're supposed to take care of our brother first, like what we're talking about is going to stand kind of in the face of that. And it's not an either or.
No, right? It's a collaboration of the two.
Yeah, and it is.
We can't forget about ourselves along the way. That's what I think has been lost.
Well, and you can't be there for other people if you are weakened.
Mm-hmm.
and diminished in some way. You can't show up for them at 100% because you're not even at 100% to start
So
with.
true.
So it's that classic adage of like the airplane mask. You got to put your mask on first,
And then give it to your kids. Yeah,
and
that's
then
so
you can help
true.
everybody else because that's what's true. And I just want people to know that my belief is that confidence is overrated. Everybody's like, just be confident, walk in there and, be confident. And I
It only
think,
goes so far. It's
well,
not
and it's
sustainable.
also what perpetuates the imposter syndrome. You're faking it. You're faking it.
You
So
know,
you're
right?
gonna feel like an imposter. I'm
Yeah.
like, but it's so overrated. Courage is much more important. And you're born with courage. We're born with courage. Every time we do something for the first time, it's courageous. You go to school for the first time. You try a sport for the first time. That's courage,
So
not
true.
confidence. We you stand in that.
Well, and it's also about, I remember when I was writing my first book, Emotion Behind Money, and my mom says to me, now this was me following my passion and my purpose, because I was just like, I knew I was supposed to share what I was doing with people one-on-one to a group at large. And my mom looks at me and she goes, you're writing a book, Jewel? I go, yeah. And she goes, you were really bad at English class. She goes, you excelled at math. That's why you do finance, honey. Are you sure you want to write this book? And I was like, Mom, I have a graduate degree from Notre Dame. I think I can handle.
Yeah.
I went to 2 excellent universities. My undergrad and graduate, I'm like, Ma, I think I figured out how to write along the way. So I realized in that process that as you're starting to explore a new venture for yourself in your work life, don't talk to those people that aren't supportive of this new venture. And it's not that my mom would always say that she's completely supportive of everything that I do, but the words coming out of her mouth didn't really match the fact that she loves me.
Yeah.
Right? And it was because in her mind, she couldn't get over the fact that this kid that I went through hell with to write essays with, because she was an English teacher, but that's why I can do it now, because I had all the support along the way, but she still remembers me.
And she thought
that was the pain in the butt to learn it.
she thought that advice was protecting you. Like oftentimes, we don't share your truest heart's desires with, and I know this is going to sound like counter to what we're always told, with the people closest to you, until that concept or idea has some roots, because the people you're closest to are vested in things being the way they are.
Correct.
And they worry for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that worry looks like, are you sure you want to do that? I mean, it happened when I was leaving corporate. I'm like, are you sure you're making so much money and like you're doing a good job? And
it's not that those things are not valid, right? Yeah, you were making a lot of money. You were on a great career track.
Yeah, but
it
so another way to look at it, right, is that, oh, this is them thinking they're really protecting me from potentially myself or making a bad mistake. And they don't recognize how diminishing
or destructive was the word that I was.
Yeah, it can be.
So just be mindful of that, right? Be mindful of that as you start. You want to have those conversations with people that make you feel more expansive as to more contracted in your fear. Yeah. Because this is about, we are all being pressed to the nth degree these days.
Yeah.
And like we said, that's not going to stop. So you really need to supply yourself with a support system in your micro world that's going to help you expand, as opposed to ones that are going to suck the life out of you more.
Yeah. And you want to, you want to find people who can be believing eyes for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of my mentors, 𝘾𝙬𝙀, used to say that all the time. Find people who are willing to be believing eyes, and grow your concept there. And it doesn't mean to like ignore doing it well or strategically. It just means understand that sometimes people like things as they are. And the idea of change for so many can be really challenging.
Right. Right. And change is the only guarantee in life. Do you see that exhale you just had? It's like, oh, can everybody just do that? So that's a great reminder that when we're at this place, like, take a deep breath. Like, oh, and if any of you out there have not tried breath work, it is amazing because we have just our breath. And I know yoga teaches this, but there's nothing like doing breath work, to where it just grounds you in your body when all these things are trying to process outside of yourself.
Yeah, most of us don't breathe well. We breathe from like here up.
Yep.
Shallow breaths.
Yep.
Like belly breaths, deep full lung breaths. Like you realize, and that's how you relax. You cannot be anxious while you are breathing deeply and fully.
I literally was at a shamanic retreat this past weekend. And one of the shamans at one point just came up behind me and whispered in my ear, just breathe deep and all will move. And all of a sudden, I just it reminded me during childbirth when they tell you to breathe. Because it relaxes everything. The breath relaxes everything. And then all of a sudden, all the emotions I was working through at that time in this shamanic healing that I was doing, that all of a sudden it was like, oh, yeah, all just released. And people keep asking me, like, Jewel, through all the transition and all the stuff going on, like, how are you staying so centered? It's because so much of it has been like breath work and yoga. And, that's another piece when you were talking about before of, how do you go inside? Well, part of it's grounding yourself. That when you're staying wired, like you stuck your finger in an electrical outlet, like you're like, like shut off the electronics, find peace somehow, whether it's going for a walk in nature.
Yeah, usually the best and fastest way to ground is to do something that is either outside or, get your hands in the dirt or your feet on the grass. And even though the time is changing, just even a walk, because inspiration literally means to breathe, to inspire is to breathe. And our ideas come through breathing.
Because it creates the space.
Yep.
It turns off the monkey mind.
Yep. If you want to solve a problem, sit down and breathe for 5 minutes.
And none of these things cost a lot of money.
It costs nothing.
And so many people, I want people to hear this. Like, our work lives seem very stressful to so many. Like, but it's my livelihood, it's my lifestyle, it's like we can, whatever we call it, it doesn't cost a lot of money to start to create the shift.
Right. It doesn't have to cost anything, honestly. Like even just in this conversation, we've listed 3 or 4 things. Deep breathe, get into nature, make a truth list, reflect, take the time to kind of ground. Like none of that costs any money.
Right.
Look at the truth and know that the only constant is change and that we don't have the power to control anything but our reactions to what comes up.
Or the lack of reactions. Right? Like I am really working on being able to, like, when something occurs, just take a step back.
Yep.
And go, that person just snapped off at me. I don't really like that. But Julie from the South Side used to be right in your face if you snapped at me.
It does take practice. It is a practice. You grow into it. And I would suggest starting with benign things, like things that aren't so hot, such hot topics. Like, oh, look at that, huh? How do I want to react to that or respond to that is actually a better, because you can't really stop your reaction. You have the reaction you have in the moment.
Well, as I've taught even my kids and my employees, like, allow yourself that bridge. Like even saying something in the fact of, I know I'm not going to say this probably in the most effective manner, but I need to get this off my chest.
Yeah.
But that right there just sets the stage of creating more of a safe space so that you can start to build that muscle to get to that new place.
Yeah. Yeah. And it honors you by giving voice to what you're really feeling and experiencing and not stuffing it down.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important for us to start to take these personal pieces and interweaving them into our work life because we haven't.
Yeah. I'm all over that.
I know, but the world hasn't. I talk to people all the time. One of the first questions I ask everyone I sit down with is, "We're sitting here 3 to 5 years from now. What do you want to see have happen?" They always say, "Financially." I go, "I don't care if it's the money,
Mhm.
anything." They never, ever, ever talk about the money,
Mhm.
ever. It's always about, God, I'd really love to do this work, blah, blah, blah. I really like this with my family. And it's about going, you want this for your family. You want to travel more. You want to be in a different relationship, like all these things, but we don't move it because we're stuck in jobs that we hate, that don't feed our heart and our souls.
Or here's a little trick. Like most people get caught up in like, I got to go look for a new job. Maybe not. Maybe in the organization that you're already in. It's like you won't know until you do your list what I love about
Right.
my work, what I don't like doing, because you may be able to even create a new position in the company that you're already in. If you can
Correct.
identify a gap, if you can identify an opportunity, an area, something that's not happening, or you may be able to make a move within the company. There are so many ways to potentially change.
But here's what people do. They go and look at job postings to see if they're interested.
Yeah.
So they look first outside of themselves. This
Yeah.
is what I want to point out to people.
Yeah.
Stop looking at job postings. Stop. Just stop, 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 stop.
Yep.
It is a waste of your time if you haven't spent the time to soul search and go inside and to write that list of what you desire
Right.
to have.
That's right.
Because otherwise, you're looking for something outside of yourself to be more important than what's inside of yourself.
Well, and you might not even recognize it when it shows up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Because you're steamrolling over yourself.
Yeah. And if you haven't drawn into your consciousness, right, what is important to you,
Hmm.
you don't even know what you're looking for.
Right.
You don't like for people who are analytical, think of it as like your metrics. You've
Mhm.
set up no dashboard. There's no
Right.
metrics for where you're going or what you're doing.
Right.
You're just like in the wind, flapping around.
How true is that statement?
So
It's
like,
like you're being whipsawed by life.
yeah, like you have no choice, and that's not true.
So this is a really important point I think people need to take in, that we've got to start to take our lives from a place of empowerment versus victim and scarcity.
Yeah.
Like financially speaking, we've created so much debt in our lives: mortgages, cars, student loans, credit cards. I owe family money. You pick it, right? They're all debts.
Yep.
Debt means you have a lack of freedom in your life because you are trying to live in the present moment and have a job that doesn't feed your heart and soul, but it pays for all of your past choices. And that is suffering. And this is what needs to shift
Yeah.
because we're victim to our circumstance then.
Yeah.
We're not actually coming from a place of empowerment.
Yeah.
And when we start to verbalize going, I made those choices, I chose those, and I'm going to choose to shift it in a different direction, and all of a sudden stuff starts to shift when you change your words behind it and your thoughts behind it. And then you start operating from a place of passion.
Yeah.
And I will say passion today. You know, it may not be what was true for you yesterday is true for you today. And
Yeah.
it's okay sometimes it's a grieving process people go through.
Yeah. I mean, this whole conversation, there are not enough discussions about it,
Hmm.
about how to be in your life with a greater sense, and I'm going to use this word delicately, control. Because really the only thing we can control are our our actions, our thoughts, our ideas,
Hmm.
and that's how you direct and navigate through the things that pop up, the
Yep.
things you didn't expect,
Yep.
things you did expect, that's the only way.
Hmm. And it I just hope that people can really that this what we're doing here, Karen, gives them a bright light that there's potential for a different reality.
Yeah, and I would encourage people to comment in the comment section on the post,
Hmm.
to forward questions to us that you want us to take a look at
Right.
and answer for you, to follow Julie and I both on social, because this is really important. Work as we have known it is completely different today, and people are trying to figure out how to navigate it. And there have been some really positive learnings, like a lot of the polls that have been done the pollsters were surprised at how well people actually adapted to work.
Right. Well, and I think people are going to be less tolerable of going back to the way that it was.
Oh yeah, and it won't be that way.
Right.
There's a lot of shifts that are going to have to happen because people found out that a lot of things that they were sad about missing in their lives, like time with their families, or the commutes that they had. Some people had horrific
Crazy
commutes,
commute.
about having to drive back and forth. Like, not having to be in that has been like kind of a cool thing. I mean, nobody likes being on like lockdown, house arrest, but coming out of that are some real powerful learnings. I encourage people to keep going. What
Hmm.
else did you like about your
Right. Write
life?
down what you loved about the pandemic stuff, not the
Yeah.
things you
What
hated.
what was great for you in
Hmm.
this window? What it made you think about?
Hmm.
How you might take action going forward? What would you script for yourself when you start talking to your employer about going back potentially into a workspace? All of that is valid.
And don't mark anything off your list unless you've had the conversation. Like, we negotiated away because we think we know how somebody's going to respond,
Yeah,
but there's not one human being that hasn't been affected by everything that's going on right now.
absolutely. Everybody on the planet.
Everyone, no matter what your background, who you are, what you've done in the past, it does not matter.
Didn't matter. I'm telling you, this was the great potential unifier. And
Totally.
we haven't gotten that right yet. It
That's
is
why the
about as
pandemic's not gone.
egalitarian a thing as we can get, because nobody escaped it. Everybody's being affected.
Everyone, everyone. And so I would encourage everyone to make those lists. Make you've got to create the dream life that you want.
And not to be afraid. I recognize, and some people feel like it's been so long that they haven't had an opportunity to be anywhere close to what they thought they wanted in their hearts, that they're afraid to
Right.
dream. They're afraid to look at it because it hurts.
Mm-hmm.
Because it hurts, because it feels like it hasn't happened yet. And of course, we use our history to try to project what's going to happen in the
Right.
future. And it may feel like there's no way for me to get out of this, whatever this is.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to encourage people, like, it's your choice. You can
Mm-hmm.
you can transition from the planet and never have tried,
That's
or
true. I'm watching that happen all over the place.
you
That
can,
is why. Can I speak to that for just 1 second?
yeah.
That is how we create disease in our bodies to do whatever transition we want, whether it's calling in a crisis from a sickness to shift and stay in our life, or create a crisis to get off the planet. We are the creators, and we attract that stuff to ourselves on an unconscious level.
Yeah.
In our subconscious mind. And just to recognize that. Sorry, I just wanted to mention that because I'm
No,
watching it
it's all
happen all
good.
over the place.
It's all good. I would love for this to be a real conversation with people, and to know that this is a space where they can come with those fears and we'll talk about them.
Right. Super important. Well, how do people get a hold of you, 𝐾𝐮?
Oh, you can visit me in several places. I'm on
Because I think it's so important that people need this support in their work life right now. And I'm the money chick. So I know you can help people transition in their work lives very much so. You've helped me over the years, and super grateful because I'm following my dreams with your help over the years. So how do they find you?
Yeah, well, the easiest thing to do is visit the website beyondblindspots.com, or Beyond Blind Spots Facebook, Instagram, and come to my free Thursday workshops. Thursday at noon Central Time. Get a little taste. Come. I usually share a little insight and then do open coaching. So come and hang out for a minute.
That's beautiful. And for those of you who haven't gone to juliemurphy.com, we are going to be giving away a free copy of my book, Awaken Your Wealth, because I want to help all of us to find the life that we dream and desire. And my book, Awaken Your Wealth, will help you on that path. All you have to do is pay for the shipping. Good stuff. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.